So today I was at IPM's annual meeting, International Partners in Ministry, and they invited a woman who is known in India for economic development, working particularly with women. And it was fascinating to hear her talk about that, because the way she framed it was back in the 80s, and it was a failure of universities to enculturate entrepreneurialism into society, you know, and so one of the questions that I would have asked her is, because she actually described their training as both aptitude and attitude, and I was like, really, you're teaching people to have an entrepreneurial attitude about things? How do you do that, you know? I mean, because it's real easy to teach skills, you know. I think it's more difficult to teach that, you know, here's the frame of mind, here's the emotions, you know, that you have to have, beyond here's the skills that you need for that, right? But in the introductions, one of the things that somebody said was, it wasn't about mutual agreement, it was about mutual action. And that's a fascinating concept to me, and that was really one of the things that we tried to capture with instructions from the cook, right? Is that it's about the small acts, right? You know, and the way we describe it is you have these other conversations, you know, you have the vision conversation, you have the gifts conversation, as well as the invitation conversations. But all that ultimately is leading to, you know, what can you do together, right? And so if you skip all that other nonsense, right, and you just say, hey, let's do this together, what do you think? We can actually start doing something, and in that mutual action, you create more conditions for agreement than if you start with, well, we need to figure out what we can agree on before we ever get to do anything, right? You know, which is sad, because you're actually deferring activity until some future day when you've, you know, create the mental construct that allows you to do something. You know, so I think it's much easier to say, hey, let's you know, clean this up or build this or, you know, do whatever, because then it also gives you the opportunity for conversation during that activity. Right? You know, and I think that by doing things together, you can actually get to the point where you reach agreement simply because you have worked with that person and you know, achieve results together and things like that. I think you're much closer to agreement than starting in some philosophical, you know, like, this is what I believe, or, you know, wherever. I'm not going to say that you don't have to have the other conversations that we talk about in the book, right? But if you can skip right to small acts, just do that.
Well, I think we're at a really interesting time right now, where we're reinventing democracy for the next phase, and my hope is that we're moving out of democracy as representation, because representation is disengagement. Brad, you sit down. You sit here while I go do something. Okay, I'll have your voice in my head as I do it. But don't move your hands, and don't rethink this thing, because I've got you gave me your vote, so now I've got to go and I've got to go about that work, and only a few hundred of us, okay, and so it's a few hundred of us, or if you look at all levels of government, tens of thousands that are saying to millions, just sit back. Maybe watch TV or something, I don't know. You know, we'll make sure your TV stays on. You know, there'll be free healthcare and free cable. Everything is good. But in the meantime, representation is disengagement. And so I think what's exciting, I think we're rethinking in terms of communities. How do we build communities as we're sitting here in this region, Northeast Ohio, at all the regions around the country that I work with, doing community building work. Each community has to look at itself and say, how do we have new conversations together? And what's beautiful about that is it takes leaders to do that, but it doesn't take leaders with any kind of position or power or permission. It takes no position, no power, and no permission for you and I to ask ourselves, with 50 or 200 or 20 or 2 people, what would we love to see possible? What can we do today? What do we have to do it with? Who else can join us in this dream and this small act that engages our gifts and our assets in these ways? So I think we're looking at democracy as an empowerment, as an engagement. You know, so what does high engagement democracy look like? Now you can still have representation occurring, right, for policy making, because again, small acts need to act in a big way around policy. So I think it takes the micro, macro, and meso levels to make it all, you know, occur. But I have lost all interest in waiting for the macro people to get anything, or to be inspired, or to get courage to do anything. I think it's up to the majority of us, which are the millions, not the tens of thousands, right? The grassroots people who have no power, no permission, and no position. It's up to us to start really engaging in millions of small acts that can help move us forward.
The difficulty with that is getting to scale.
Right.
Right. You know, if you want to have a global impact, which is necessary in this situation, you know, what is the sort of high leverage opportunity? You know, I mean, you can do millions of small acts. Is that actually going to, on aggregate, over time, have the impact that you need to affect this global situation? You know, and I couldn't even begin to tell you what that would be, you know, but it's definitely worth having the conversation about. You know, if you, even just raising the question, how can on a grassroots level, you know, can we affect this sort of change around the world without these artificial entities, you know, that we've been relying on for, you know, 10 years or more to deal with climate change? What does that look like? You know, is it, you know, I mean, my mind always goes to the internet, you know, because you can connect with people all over the world, you know, organize them in a very quick way around their self-interest, you know, but then the question is yeah, all that stuff is out there, right? You know, Facebook is all over the place. There's what is it, Care2, you know, that organizes activists. I mean, there's all these people out there that are doing this stuff. Why isn't it, you know, why isn't it making change?